Well, hi folks, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today you might be wondering what's going on here, because I've got my friend Greg here and he's all dressed up. We'll explain that a little bit in a minute. But basically, we are recording this today. It is now the 2nd of September, I think it is.
Yeah, that's correct.
And we're recording this in advance. Welcome, Greg, by the way.
Thank you, Jeff.
We've been on the air a few times before.
We've done a bit of this, yes.
We have done a bit of this. But anyway, we're pre-recording this because in November at the Glenelg Probus Club, Greg is going to be doing a special talk about his dad because it's Remembrance Day. And his dad was a very notable cricketer back in his day. And also he was a member of the famous Dambusters squadrons in the Second World War. And also in a couple of other squadrons before he joined the Dambusters squadron. And one of the interesting things that Greg's dad did, apart from his war record, which was quite amazing, really, and just a reminder, we're not here to glorify war today. We are remembering the fallen and the sacrifices that people have made. And one of the things that happened with Greg's dad and many other servicemen after the war finished, there were notable cricketers over in Europe and the continent and in England, and there was a series of test matches between an Australian services team and the English team, an English test team, and also teams from India, I think, and Sri Lanka, which used to be Ceylon in those days. And so we're going to be talking about Greg's dad, remembering Roscoe. His name was Ross Stanford. And we're going to be remembering him today and remembering other people, of course. And we're actually going to be airing, this is not going to be published until the 11th of November, which is Remembrance Day. And the people who are at the actual talk on that day that Greg gives, it'll be a bit shorter than this. They will have the option of being able to look on the internet and seeing a longer version of what Greg's going to present that day. So we've got some slides presented for you. And we're going to be showing them a little bit later. We want to talk about a few other things first. We've got some books and publications here that we're going to talk about, and we'll see how we go. So does that sound like a fair thing, Greg?
Does to me, Jeff.
Reckon we're ready to go?
Right, we're ready to go, aren't we? Yeah.
Just a reminder, I've been trying to look up at the camera up there instead of looking here, because then we're looking down. So if we try and look at the camera up there as we talk and as we look at each other, that might be a good idea. It might be a bit more professional, but we've never been professional on this. We've never been professional on this channel, but we're trying to be today. Okay, yes. So now, Greg, you've got all those medals and everything there. Can you tell us a little bit about, I mean, there's one very important one there. Can you tell us a little bit about what you've got on today? I mean, normally on Remembrance Day or on Anzac Day, people who had parents in the various wars and whatever, they wear all their dad's medals and all that sort of stuff. Tell us what you're wearing today and why you're doing it.
Yes, Joe, I'm wearing this gear today, if I'll put it that way. My dad's medals that he earned during the war, and particularly the best one is that one there on the end. It's called the Distinguished Flying Cross.
The DFC, I think.
The DFC, they call it for short, yes. Every Anzac Day and Remembrance Day, I get dressed up like this.
Do you?
And, so, yeah, just I'm just remembering my dad and all the thousands of others who, both those who sacrificed their life, which there were thousands of, and my dad was one of the lucky ones. He actually took off. He was the flight lieutenant, the pilot of his plane. He took off 47 times and he came back 47 times.
This was on missions over
Europe.
Over Germany and Berlin. And
8 trips over Berlin. I mean, how lucky was he?
Well, you know, I don't know whether luck comes into it, but he was certainly a very brave person, as was all his crew.
For sure.
And
the thousands of others who flew with them. Yes.
And of course, we're remembering many of them that didn't come back.
Well,
some of them went down on their first mission.
Exactly right. And that's what's the sad part about it. as Jeff said earlier, we're not trying to glorify war, but we want to remember those, all those thousands of men and women who took part
in protecting their country.
To protect their country.
Yeah, fantastic. One of the things we're going to do, folks, is we're going to look at some of, as I mentioned before, some of these books that have been published about this era, about the famous, what was the squadron that the Dambusters was called? What was it called?
617.
617 squadron, that's right.
Yes.
And there was a famous film came out about that some years ago, of course. And there's a book, actually, here called The Australian Dambusters. And it was produced to mark the 70th anniversary of the 617 squadron, wasn't it? And the Dambusters mission, I think.
Yes.
By Colin Burgess. And Greg and I actually went to the book launch of this book, and there's a photo that you might see today that is actually in this book as well, because Greg Stagg gets a mention in that book. And if you really want to know the history of the whole mission and what they did, watch the movie or read the book and whatever. It's a wealth of information in there, and lots of photographs and some really interesting things. That's one little book I mentioned by Colin Burgess, and that was an interesting night, wasn't it?
It was.
Very interesting. It was.
Yes.
Another book that we've got here is this one here called Cricket, Not War. And that is worth getting hold of. The Australian Services 11 and the Victory Tests of 1945. Yes. And Lindsay Hassett was you might see him there. He was a Australian Test player. He was about the only Test player in the team, wasn't he? At that stage.
Keith Miller was also amongst this group, but he didn't play Test cricket till after the war.
No, he made his entry into the world stage in these teams, didn't he? Keith Miller?
Did, yes.
He became a famous Test cricketer. So, and that was the Wally Hammond, I think, was the captain of the English team.
That's right, and it was the English Test team too. It wasn't sort of a second-rate team.
These tests have never been recognised as official test matches. They were recognised as first-class matches, but they were an understrength team. There was only probably 2 players in the team that were actually test players, and the rest of them were up-and-coming players, including your dad. And so it's a really fascinating book. You should get hold of that if you want to learn more about this whole situation. There's lots of books have been done about this type of thing. There's another one here called the Data Sport Book of Wartime Cricket, 1940 to 1945. And that one there is by Gordon Andrews. And there's lots of interesting information in there, lots of statistics if you want to really get into that. Here is Cess Pepper and Keith Miller are the men going out to bat there. So you can see that there, but you'll see some photos similar to this that we're going to show you afterwards that are in Greg's dad's photo album. So heaps of statistics there, really interesting. That's that one. Greg's got a whole lot of memorabilia, I think that's the right word, in his collection, photo albums and lots of brochures and pamphlets and even menus of dinners that the Australian Services team went when they went to places like India and Ceylon and whatever. They were fated upon, what's the word? They were celebrated. And welcomed. Yes. You'll see some photos of their welcome in some of these countries that we're going to show in the slideshow shortly. There's also, you've got a whole, what are these here? Tell me what these are, Greg. We just hold them up to the sea.
They're placemats that were done by I can't remember who did them now. Has it got it on there, Jeff?
Yeah, there is, but I can't read it. Yeah. I think he's the same cartoonist that did the other one that we're going to show in a minute. I did try and look him up yesterday when I was doing some research on this. But so these are some placemats that did your dad organise these a few years ago? Did he, or you don't know who did it?
Well, I don't. I just inherited them from him.
Yeah, you inherited them.
So I was aware of them, yes. Yeah. But I don't know.
Yeah, there was a lot of cartoons done during the wartime, of course, and some of these are quite interesting. But there's a whole collection there that we've got, and if this whets your interest, you can do your own research with a lot of these things. This other thing here is a precious book here. Tell us what this is all about, Greg. Just hold it up for the camera there and tell us what that's all about.
Oh, this is...
Hold it up and look up at the camera up there.
Yeah. Well, this is my grandma's scrapbook. She kept,
so your grandma was your dad's mother, is that right?
Yes, that's what I'm talking about. Yes. And she just all the newspaper clippings. She did what a lot of mums did.
Yeah.
When their son or any of their children get noticed, dad in the sporting scene, of course, he had lots of bits about him in the paper before the war as well as after the war.
So if you're a good parent back in the day, you collected newspaper articles about your children and their exploits. Your dad played, we've lost all that down there, but there's heaps of things in here because your dad not only played cricket, he also played football and golf, and he was quite a celebrity, wasn't he, back in those days? He played for the West Torrens Cricket Club, didn't he?
That's correct, yes. Well, if you remember, Jeff, that's where we met.
We met at the West Torrens Cricket Club.
Theban and Oval.
We did.
Way back 50-odd, late 60s, 50 plus years ago is when Jeff and I first met each other, both playing cricket.
Yeah.
So
and I criticised you for being such a lazy fieldsman.
Yeah, well, you did.
I said, wake up, Greg, you're going to sleep out there in the hot sun.
Yeah, that was after I missed. Anyway, that was after I missed one. Yeah,
this is not about us. No, this is about your dad and remembering your dad. But he had played some amazing games for the West Torrens Cricket Club. Tell me a bit about his background and how come he who the famous person was that he played with in a first class game, and about his background and perhaps why he never really had the career that maybe he should have deserved, and some of his early exploits as a schoolboy. Can you talk about some of that?
Oh, yeah, well, he was an amazing schoolboy cricketer. He once held the world record for a primary school, grade 7 student of 416.
416 in a primary school match.
That's right, yes.
As about a 12-year-old or 11-year-old probably.
No, he was a bit older because he missed 2 years of school because he was very ill early on. And he was actually... What was he ill with? What?
Oh. Doesn't matter. We should have done some research on that. Maybe not.
Should have.
Yeah. Anyway, go on.
Anyway, he was 14 when he made this big score. So it was at the bottom oval at Adelaide High, the one by the railway station, just off.
Okay. Our international viewers wouldn't know where that is.
And of course, colleges, when they hear of kids doing something, that they immediately sign them up. So Dad ended up going to Prince Alfred College, and from there he's just flourished as a schoolboy cricketer, and got given a state game at age 18.
So he played for South Australia at age 18?
At age 18, it was against Tasmania, who were not in the Sheffield Shield at that stage. Yeah. But every state used to play Tasmania to give them, their players a chance to play.
Give some exposure.
Exposure. And of course, when Dad was due to go in, the guy out in the middle waiting.
This is in Tasmania in this first class game?
No, this is at Adelaide Oval.
It's at Adelaide Oval, was it? Okay. So this was a game between South Australia and
Tasmania at the Adelaide Oval. And it's just a practice game for Tasmania. Well, it didn't count for the Sheffield Shield points.
Yeah.
And the guy waiting for him out in the middle was a bloke called Don Bradman.
So I've heard of him.
You've heard of him? Yeah.
Perhaps our listeners might have heard of Don Bradman.
Yeah, so...
Tongue-in-cheek, we're saying, of course.
Yeah.
Most famous cricketer, probably
known
to cricket.
Dad's story of it all is that Bradman pushed the ball around.
So he was out batting with Don Bradman on the Adelaide Oval.
Well, that's correct, yeah. Yeah, for not very long, though, Bradman pushed the ball around a bit for about 4, I think it's 4 times, Dad said, for 2 runs, just to get him used to running up and down the pitch. And the first ball Dad faced, he pushed it into the covers and took off like a scared rabbit and got run out. So,
and how much had he made? Nothing.
He made nothing. That's right, exactly nothing. And Bradman went on to make 369 not out in this same game, which at that time was the record South Australian score.
Yeah.
So on the still there, the same old scoreboard at Adelaide Oval, I suppose the plus is there. It says Bradman 369 not out, and underneath it says Stanford running out north.
Yeah, so that's on photographs of the scoreboard taken at the time. Yeah.
That was his first game, but that was his only game he got before the war, because he didn't play the proper Shield cricket till after he got back from the war. Because, as you know, that interrupted most people's lives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then he worked in the bank. Or no, tell us about his working career and his background and all that sort of stuff.
Oh, well, he left school. He got a job in the state bank, which he held until the war started. He got transferred to Waikerie and then Tailem before the war, which didn't help his cricket career, of course, but he went and played in the country, and he took Waikerie South from bottom to top, or he helped do that, because he was not bad as a batsman.
A lot of those statistics are in these books, aren't they? There's those newspaper clippings,
true.
a lot of those statistics from his games.
Yeah, true. He was Waikerie for 18 months, then I transferred him to Tailem, and he was there for 18 months in the early, like 1940, 41, and played in a football premiership there. And then, of course, the war was raging, and in early 41, he decided he better go to war. So that's
and he joined the Air Force.
He joined the Air Force.
Was it the RAAF? Is that
RAAF? Well, Australian Air Force. And he started his training on Tiger Moths and his small planes. Had a
Avro-Ansons.
And had a parafield, then Victor Harbour for more than 12 months before they sent him off to England. And then he trained on the bigger ones, and eventually got to fly Lancasters.
Lancasters were bombers?
The bombers.
Yeah,
the biggest plane in the war, the Lancaster bomber, 4-engine plane,
And so how come he ended up flying in England, and he was actually he's a special part of the RAF, wasn't he, which is the Royal Air Force, not the RAAF. Is that right, or have I got that wrong?
Well, the RAAF is the Royal Australian Air Force. The RAF is just the Royal Air Force in England.
But the Dambusters Squadron was attached to the RAF.
RAF, nothing to do with RAAF, not Australia. It's in English.
So he must have done a transfer at one stage. How did he end up flying in the Dambusters Squadron? Because he was flying on other missions under the RAAF, wasn't he?
He was, yes, he flew. I think he flew 47 times altogether, 23 with other squadrons and 24 with Dambusters. The big dams raid that did all the damage, and probably the most famous raid was the bouncing bomb by a bloke called Sir Barnes Wallace. Dad and his crew didn't actually go on that raid, but they were reserves. 19 planes went on that raid, and only 11 came back.
So it was a costly raid.
It was a costly raid.
But it was a turning point in the war, wasn't it?
Well, it was. It was one of the biggest turning points of the war, because it broke 3 big dams, and in that valley, just flooded the valleys, and in that valley was most of Germany's industry and everything. So
it's horrible when you think about these wars, and they're still going on, aren't they, at the moment, between Russia and Ukraine, and people just don't learn, do they?
Dad and his crew, one of the 8 planes got lost, as I just said. Dad and his crew,
they then
replaced
some of those planes that got lost. Wow. Scary stuff, isn't it? Okay, so they finished the war then, and do you remember much about how the test matches started playing, how the cricket started going on? How did that happen?
Well, they did. Dad and a few mates who played cricket, they didn't go on raids every week or anything. No. Occasionally, every couple of weeks or 3 weeks, they could play a game of cricket. So one of that thing was advantageous to Dad in particular. He got to play at all the test grounds, Lords, Edgbaston, Trent Bridge. He didn't play at the Oval because that had been bombed, that was blown up. But he played 6 games at Lord's, and he never would have got there had it not been for the war. So if you can put a plus on war, and he got to play with guys like Lindsay Hassett and Keith Miller.
There's some booklets you've got here, Greg, that someone else has published called Ed Jaggard, I think. Forgotten Heroes, the 1945 Australian Services cricket team. You probably can't see that. And the history of the 1945 Australian Services cricket team. So that gives you a lot more background about all the games that these guys used to play back then, which is really quite interesting. So your dad was, he never really got back down to playing in the big time because of his work, really. He was in the country.
Oh, only before the war. When he came back, he went straight back into the state bank. And of course, my family, and that's what he grew up on, the market garden, and I did for the first part of my life. We had land at Fulham Gardens.
So your dad was a market gardener, or his family was? My great grandfather bought land at Fulham Gardens, 26 acres, would you believe, on Tapley's Hill Road in 1858. So that's where the Stanford family was for about 4 generations until most of the land got sold, by 1960s, the 60s. So then Grandpa was starting to get a bit old, so Dad only, and he couldn't quite cope. So Dad and Bruce, his brother, went and worked the market garden in the late 1940s, 1950. So that was his. Greg, at this stage, I think what we might do is we might swap over to that slideshow that we've prepared that you're going to be showing to the Glenelg Probus Club, and we will just put that up on the screen, ladies and gentlemen. And you'll be able to, and we'll just talk about some of those photos and what we won't know everything about all of them. We know about the ones that I took on the day we did the photo shoot with your dad. We know about that, but we can talk about some of this as we go, and then we'll probably wrap up after that. I'm going to put down below this video some links, because Greg and I did an interview similar to this about 13 years ago, as we might have explained, and I'll put a link to the original one that we did out in the backyard here. And you'll be able to look at that and compare the two. You might find some more information that we've forgotten about. We're getting old, we don't remember everything. We don't remember everything. And so I'll put some links there, and also some photographs I took when that book was launched, the Dambusters book. We went along there and I took some photos that night, and they had a special ceremonies and everything. And on a link to my blog, you'll see some of those photos that I took them. I won't show them to you today, but there'll be a link underneath to be able to see some of that. So now we're going to do the tricky part, Greg, and try and work out how we can flick across to this slideshow. It's all done with mirrors.
I'll leave that to you, Jeff.
Yeah, well, that's what I was afraid. It says down here, share the screen. So we're going to share the screen with all these people out there. So bear with us, folks, while we share the screen. We'll just get that out the road. And we will just come over here, I think, to the PowerPoint. There it is. And we're going to play from the start. The Ross Stanford story by Greg Stanford, assisted by Jeff Thompson. How about that?
How about that? Yes.
And we're going to actually be showing this on the day, on Remembrance Day. But this video, we're only going to publish this on Remembrance Day. So even though we're recording it a couple of months early, so we're trying to sort of project our minds ahead. So anyway, here we go. And there's your dad. You can talk your way through some of these shots that we've got as we go. You can just comment. You have a comment about that one? How old was he then?
Oh, he was 26, 1943.
Yeah.
And 60 years later, you, Jeff, took a photo of him, the same man in the same uniform at age 86.
Yeah, we got that shot afterwards.
Let's see
that was the same day, though. That was the same day when he was 86.
Yeah.
Yeah, we went and did a photo shoot, as I said earlier. And your dad dressed up in the same medals that you've got there, I think.
That's right, shots. Yes.
There he is. Look at that.
That's age 86 in the same uniform as the headshot just showed.
Yeah, that's in the backyard. And you've got a special tie on there. What's this tie you've got on here?
Oh, this is the squadrons Dad was in before he joined the 617 down.
Before
416, 467.
Yeah.
And that tie is also I think that does represent the 617 Squadron
Okay.
without actually having it written on there.
Okay. So these are just some shots we did in the backyard. We had a lot of fun that day, didn't we?
Yeah.
Doing that. And that's going back to a few years ago. Our cricket club, the West Torrens Cricket Club, had their centenary.
Which was 1997.
Yeah, well, I didn't remember that. But who's in this photo here, Greg?
Oh, on my left is my mother, and on my right is my auntie, my mother Joyce is her name, and my auntie Elspeth, wife of my uncle Bruce, who was Dad's brother.
Yep. I remember reading somewhere in your eulogy when your dad died, and Greg's dad's funeral was actually held at the Adelaide Oval, and a huge amount of people there. And I remember you giving such a tribute to your mother. And I remember somewhere I read that he said that his greatest innings was not his innings that he had with Keith Miller, but the innings he had with your mum.
Well, he did say that, 52 years of happy marriage, and unfortunately she passed away in the year 2000, and she was only 76 years old.
Yeah.
But I guess in a way it was sudden, had a heart attack and passed away. At least we didn't have to watch her suffer from cancer or something like that for years.
Yeah. And you had a sister too that you lost tragically when she was reasonably young too.
She was only 44, and
44,
breast cancer got her.
That was very sad.
Years,
yeah. An important part of the family though. So there you go. That was, and your dad was there that night. That was, we had a lot of illustrious cricketers there that night. David Hooks,
Ian Chappell,
and one of the test umpires, and some other notable Australian test players.
Yes.
Now, what do we got here?
Well, this is the Australian Services 11. Is it the 11 or was it 12?
Oh, I don't know. That must be one of their teams that they
7, 8, 9, 10, 11. That's 12, yeah.
Your dad's in that photo, isn't he?
Dad's, he's sitting down and he's on the far right of the picture as you look at it.
Yeah, far right of the picture if you look at it.
With his arms crossed.
And, if he's looking at us, it's on his left.
Yes.
But anyway, make some sense out of that if you can.
Oh, God.
Here's another one, RAAF cricket
teams, yeah. And there was a squad of, I think it was 16.
Okay.
15 or 16 anyway.
Yeah.
A bit like they choose the test squads now.
Yeah.
For an Ashes series, they choose 15 or 16, and the final 11 or 12 comes out of that.
Yeah. And this is your dad.
That's there. He's playing a leg lance at Lord's there.
Yeah.
And he's just started off for
a run.
For the run. He's tilted it around the fine leg.
I haven't been able to find out who took all these photos. I've done some research. I'm presuming they're out of copyright. So
I've got no idea.
We've got no idea. I've looked to where I can. I've found other books from similar eras, but a lot of the photos that are here I haven't been able to find anywhere else.
Yeah.
And I'm surprised at the quality of them. You know, they had these great big cameras that they used to use back in those days, and they're really good. Look at that for an action shot.
Yeah, like black and white only then in 1945. It's a long time ago.
But the quality of the photography is great.
It's pretty good, isn't it?
Yeah, that's just some of the guys in Brighton. Yeah. So they travelled all around England and they played in local club grounds.
Yeah.
This is, on the village green sort of thing in local cricket.
And a lot of these photos were taken in between, well, the war was still on, of course. So they'd go on a flight and then they give them a rest for a couple of weeks, and they could, if they could find a game of cricket, they would. Yeah. As you can see there. Yeah. A bit of a break from the horrible. There you are. Horrible.
I looked up Ditchling. There's still a Ditchling cricket club. I looked it up on the internet one day. Yeah, they got quite a flourish. Well, a couple of years ago when I looked it up, they did. Yeah. But that's a Ditchling, and perhaps someone from Ditchling might be watching, can make a comment. And I'm not sure what that photo is all about. Do you know much about that? That's your dad in the middle holding the plane, isn't it?
That looks like that anyway. Yeah, I think it is. Yeah. At Bristol, I can't tell you any more than what you see.
No. So if anyone can shed some light on what
a lot
that
of these
be.
black and white ones, I've got no idea.
Now tell us about the man on the right in particular, if you know anything about the other man as well. Tell us about it.
I've heard of Keith Asprey, I don't know him, but Leonard Cheshire was one of Dad's main bosses, and after the war, he and his wife, Lady Ryder, started homes for the underprivileged in India, And when he decided he would open homes in Australia, Dad was the first man that Leonard Cheshire contacted. So Dad got it started here in 1970.
This was a charity.
Excuse me. Yeah, charity, and of course
Cheshire Foundation, is that what it's called?
Ryder Cheshire
Ryder
Foundation.
Cheshire.
Ryder, because that's his wife was Sue Ryder.
Who was a sister of somebody else? No, maybe not.
No.
Want to grab a glass of water?
Yeah. No, not at all, Jeff.
No, I got that wrong then. Doesn't matter. Anyway, he was also a famous pilot or something as well, wasn't he? I think
He was. Yeah, Guy Gibson, I got Leonard Cheshire took off. He flew a Lancaster bomber just like that. He took off 104 times and came back.
Wow, goodness.
I think that's about the record. But I mean, how lucky are you?
Yeah.
And the same man only had one lung back then.
Wow, goodness. There's another scene of a cricket match somewhere. There's a fair crowd there. I'm not sure what ground that is.
That's probably after the war finished to get crowds like that. You couldn't get them while the war was on.
Now, this is back to our photo shoot. Tell us about this. About the bat and everything.
Oh, that bat's a bat that was produced after the war, but not every. They couldn't. Well, a couple of them that died, but they've only got about 7 or 8 signatures on that, I think. So they all got one of those.
Every one of the players got
given
one of
those. Got given one of those.
Yeah, and there's some of them are autographs on there. And
goodness me, I've forgotten who instigated all that too. I should remember it, but I don't.
There's you and your dad.
Yeah.
The amazing thing is Dad was still able to fit into his uniform, and you'll see a couple of shots at the end where he doesn't, taken when he was younger and when he was 86 and still sitting in the same uniform. There he is. That's what
there he is.
That's the one I took on that day.
That's it. And one I showed you earlier, age 26, that is age 86, and it's in the same uniform he wore during the war.
Yeah. And there's there's all the medals you're wearing there today.
I've got these medals on my chest. It's the same replicas. Sorry,
replicas.
On my coat are replicas, and not the. And those that my dad's got there are also replicas. Yeah. Wow. And what I'm holding there is his Order of Australia medal, which you can see on where he's holding, second in from the left. Yeah. The OAM. And what did he get that for? Well, a bit of everything. I suppose the big part was the war bit, what he contributed there, and then his 40 to 50 years of charity work after the war for the Ryder Cheshire Foundation and other things. And go on. And I've actually got 2 OAMs. My mum got one as well. She got one as well for her charity work. Yes. We are. This is Greg Stanford batting with Ross Stanford keeping wickets. That's right. We did a few poses that day, didn't we? It was Jeff Thompson bowling. Jeff Thompson bowling, that's right. Well, I was using the camera anyway. Oh, Jeff Thompson opened the bowling for Australia. Yeah, he did. Spells his name wrong though. He's got a J and a Thompson with no P. No P. And I'm a G and a Thompson with a P. So there you go. Yeah. He got it all wrong. Oh. There's the bat we were talking about. So some of the guys actually did manage to sign it. And there's all the names of all the people. Names of all of them, but they can only get a couple of them. I'm not sure reasons why they refused to sign it. Okay, don't know why. Okay, and that's back that other shot again. It's just got a wider grin on your face, I think. Yeah, I have, haven't we? Now we're going back to the wartime. Now this is tell us about this one. Well, as it says down the bottom, it's after their 8th trip to Berlin. Now, the crew, there's only 7. Now, there's 2 other guys. There's 9 in that photo. There's 2 other guys, because Dad and his crew were so famous and they wanted to get a photo. Now, I don't know which 2 it is, but 2 of them are not supposed to be there. And Dad, his usual modest self, if you look 3rd in from the right as you look at it, with a beret on, at the back you can see his chin's chopped off. Here's Dad standing at the back. And
which side? This side or that side?
No, third in from the left as you look at
from the
it.
left. Oh, okay.
That's Dad at the back. He's just a humble man. He never wanted to be the front man, but he should have been. He was captain of the plane.
Okay.
And there he is again with his crew. That's Dad in the middle. So they're a pretty big plane.
So that was a Lancaster,
Yeah.
Yeah. I think my dad might have flown. My dad was a pilot too, folks. He used to fly Catalinas, but he didn't serve in the same places that Roscoe did. But that's a whole other story. But wow. And what's this one? This in here, I mean, it's self-explanatory. It says Churchill at Bradford. I tried to research this. I'm presuming that's Churchill over there on the right-hand side. If you're looking at the picture, he's up in a podium up there. You can just see his face up there about
I'm not sure.
2/3 of the way up on the right-hand side, up the top there. That's him addressing the crowd.
And that would have been at the end of the war after.
It possibly was, yeah. So that's
didn't get big crowds in the street when there's bombs flying everywhere.
No, so
part of the celebrations up immediately after the war.
I did do a bit of research on that, and I think that was a big occasion. And that's another man that we don't really know who he is, do we?
I've got no idea. I've never heard of him. There's Dad.
A lot of the servicemen, of course, used to smoke in those days.
Oh yeah, Dad never smoked before he went to war.
Smoking again.
For some reason, he's got smoke in both those photos. I don't know why.
Well, see, the only time my dad ever smoked was in the wartime, and he didn't smoke afterwards because I guess they just were so nervous about what was going on.
Oh, for sure, it was one way they could relax a bit.
That's a photo of some of the bomb damage in
Berlin, yeah.
Getting back to very sober things, horrible. And this is the sort of thing that's been happening in the Ukraine, of course.
It is. It's exactly what's happening now.
Yeah.
Want
to grab another glass of water?
Yeah. Just have another sip. Yeah.
Yeah. And this was a special bomb, wasn't it, that they developed called the Grand Slam, wasn't it? Was that the name?
The bouncing bomb it was called.
That wasn't one of the bouncing ones, though, was it?
I think the Grand Slam's the name of the plane. I'm not sure.
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure.
No, I had an idea the bomb was, but anyway, we don't want to glorify all that, but you can do your research and look at the history of all those sort of things.
Yeah, a bloke called Sir Barnes Wallace.
Yeah.
He invented this bouncing bomb.
The bouncing bombs.
And it took him 3 years to convince the bosses, the constabulary, that this would work and blow up these 3 bombs on the Mona, Eder and Sorp dams, 3 big dams.
Yeah.
Might have even been a 4th one included.
Yeah.
And when he finally talked them into doing it, it worked. And it just because 3/4 of Germany's, I think it might have been in the Ruhr Valley actually. Yeah. Anyway.
We've got the Olympic Stadium at Berlin there, and that was a controversial Olympics they had in.
Well, that was before the war, though. I think in 1936. 1936 it was, yeah.
So we're getting back. This is the first victory test team at Lord's.
Yeah.
And that's Keith Miller on the back left hand, our right, isn't he? Standing up the top there.
On our right.
And your dad's sitting next to Lindsay Hassett, who was the captain.
And that's sitting in the middle row there.
Yeah. So your dad is second on our right. He's on our right as we look at it.
He's on Lindsay Hassett's left.
Yeah, he's on Lindsay Hassett's left. There you go.
Yeah.
There's another shot of a similar team. I think that's still the Australian team, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh no, that might be the English team.
I think it's the English team.
No, that's the English team.
Is it?
I think.
They look a bit like Poms, don't they?
Well, they don't look like any of those Australians we just saw.
No, probably not.
That might be.
There's the Australian team coming out at Lord's.
Yeah. And Dad's in the background there again.
And there's all the crowds. You can see some of the players scattered around the field. After the game's finished, they're all coming out to get autographs and all that sort of stuff. Look at the crowds there.
Oh, they used to get crowds of 25, 30,000. Remembering that English grounds are only small compared to ours. They can't fit 50 or 100,000 like we can here. Yeah. And every match was just, they'd turn people away because the war had finished. And for once they could get back to relaxing after 6 years of turmoil. Yeah. So, and of course the English loved cricket.
They did. And Sec Pepper, was he a batsman or was he the wicketkeeper? No, Dick Sisney was the wicketkeeper, wasn't he?
Stan Sisney.
Stan Sisney, yeah. I think he was one of the top batsmen.
Sis Pepper.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was. And
Back,
then when they came back to Australia, he couldn't get in the test team, so he immediately went to England in protest and never came back.
Okay.
He ended up being one of their top umpires as well after he finished playing.
And there's your dad.
And that's Dad playing a shot. Well, I guess that's a late cut, about to take off for a run. I don't know what ground that was at, though.
I'm not sure whether that photo's around the wrong way. You said he's a right-hand batsman, wasn't he? Maybe that photo should be around the other way and he's actually playing a leg glance like the other one, but who knows? Anyway, it's a great photo.
That's not a leg glance. He's gone forward. His bat's come through.
Okay. All you experts on cricket out there, you can analyse that. And there's Jack Robinson. Who is he?
Well, I don't know.
You don't know him?
No.
Bill Edrick?
Bill Edrich, yeah, that should be an H on there.
Should be an H, okay. These are all photos that I took photos directly from Ross's photo album.
Right, yeah.
Another shot. I'm not sure where that is. It looks like one of the big grounds.
It's one of the test grounds for sure.
Yeah. And there's a lot of cartoons were done in those days.
There's the caricature. I've forgotten the man's name, but he did the caricature
Barnett.
of everything.
I think it was A. Barnett.
Barnett or something.
If you have a look at
it
here,
under his foot.
Yeah.
Down the bottom, it's Barnett.
Yeah,
isn't it?
up the top it says by A. Barnett.
Oh, A. Barnett.
Yeah, I tried to find him on the internet the other day, but I couldn't find him.
Well, he's the guy who did all those caricatures, and it's how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Well, that was it.
21, 5, 45.
That was the Lord's Test, which was one of the 5 that were played.
Yeah.
Dad only played in 2 of them, not the whole 5.
Yeah. Yeah. And look at that crowd there.
That's the crowd. That's what the.
That's at Lord's.
Yeah.
There's your dad.
That's Dad. Yeah.
How old was he then? 26 or 27?
20. Mid-20s.
Yeah.
When he
Brass
started
band. Look, they've got a big band playing.
Yeah.
Big occasions.
Yeah.
That was at Old Trafford. That was another test ground.
Yeah.
Maybe a bit of ball tampering going on there, do you think?
Could be.
Selkirk. That must have been another village or something. Yeah. Selkirk again. I love all these team photos.
Yeah.
And that looks like afternoon tea.
Yes.
A couple of tea ladies out there.
Tea ladies as well, yeah.
Isn't that a fantastic photo?
Yeah.
This is how you
how they used to
have
do
afternoon tea.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Eastbourne, that's your dad there with his hair flying up in the air,
his
isn't it?
hair flying up in the air, that's Dad, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's him he's right out the front. That's not normal for him.
He's at the front with his arms folded.
He usually
with
hides.
his hands folded.
With his hands together, yeah.
Wagon Works ground at Gloucester. So there you go.
Don't know that.
Someone there's probably doing an interview or something there, or taking a photo.
Like it, yeah.
Wally Hammond and Lindsay Hassett,
the 2 captains.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is in a hotel. They went to lots of functions, didn't they? And stayed in all sorts of places.
It was all turned on from because they were heroes. They were all war heroes, apart from their cricket ability.
You can find this sort of stuff on the internet, folks. This is a series summary. I found that the match statistics there. Keith Miller in that first match made 105 and announced himself on the world scene. Really, Sec Pepper made 54, and second match, who made all the runs then? Wally Hammond made 100, and somebody called D. Carmody for Australia made 42. Carmody. And down below, Lindsay Hassett made 68 in the third match. Yeah. Keith Miller 71, Len Hutton 104, Len Hutton 69. So he was a pretty good player, wasn't he?
Well, he was.
And then we've got Lindsay Hassett made 68 there. Keith Miller 71. Keith Miller scored heavily in all these games. Look at 118 down there. And
he took a few wickets.
77 down there, and he took wickets, So it says down here, after the victory chess, following on from the success of the Tour of England, the Australian Services 11 travelled through India and Sri Lanka, then called Ceylon, for 4 months at the request of Australian External Affairs Minister Dr. H.V. Evatt, before returning to Australia to play against Sheffield Shield state sides. The gruelling schedule resulted in many players in the service side playing well below their capabilities, and by the time they were back in Australia, they were routinely beaten easily by the local teams. However, the importance of the victory test tour as a whole cannot be understated because it helped people get back to their normal lives after the war and unearthed some of the great cricketers of the time. There you go. Now, this guy here in the middle, he was a famous cricketer too, I think. I looked him up, and he only played oh, that's Keith Miller, by the way, on a boat there.
On the boat coming home.
Don't know if anyone's ever seen that photo before. Yeah. And that's Ross and Keith's in the middle next to your dad, I think, isn't he? In that one, is that Keith Miller next to your dad?
Yeah. I think so, yeah.
Some other guys on the ships. Of course, they're on ships all the time, travelling back and forth.
Well, that's how they travel back and forth. It's quite a ship. There's no such thing as catching a plane back then.
Yeah, they didn't catch a plane back then.
Not as a tourist or not. Yeah.
That's approaching. That could be Gibraltar, I think. I'm not sure where that is.
One of those big rocks, yeah.
And that's your dad and Keith Miller at a swimming pool in a hotel somewhere.
Wherever, yeah.
Yeah, wherever. Now we're in Bombay. This is in India.
Yeah.
And you know that they're in the tropics by the clothes that they're wearing. They've got their shorts and their khaki.
What's Bombay called now? Changed its name.
I don't know.
It's called something else, I think, isn't it? Bombay?
I'm a bit too old to remember all this stuff. It's probably Mumbai now, is it? Is it Mumbai? I don't know. Someone better correct us in the comments underneath, folks. And travelling around by buses and planes.
Yeah.
Another hotel they must have been staying in. Now, this is this guy who was a famous Indian Test player.
Okay.
And you'll see his name in a minute. And this is they were presented with lays and things. It's Lindsay Hassett.
Lindsay Hassett, of course. Yeah. Hassett again. With that same Indian man.
And I'll tell you who he is. There he is, Doodley.
Oh, Tulip Shingi. Okay, yeah, I've heard of him.
He only played a handful of Test matches.
Well, I have heard that name. Yes.
Him and his relation Ranjit Shinji, I think,
Ranjit
or Ranji they used to call him. They were the two of the most famous Indian cricketers in the day.
Okay.
And this man had an amazing Test average, but I think he only played about a dozen Test matches because he had ill health, but he made lots of first class runs.
Right.
But he was the top Indian cricketer back in the day.
Okay.
And that's another shot. Looks like it's on a boat again of the team.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, your dad's in the middle again. Got his wings
got
on.
Proper uniform on, yeah.
He's a bit of a suave sort of guy, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Going back to some of the cricket matches again.
Yeah.
Some great shots here. Watching the game. That's Lindsay Hassett this end, or was that your dad this end? No, that's Lindsay Hassett.
No, it's not Dad, yeah, it might be Hassett.
Yeah. They're obviously in one of the on the continent, the subcontinent or whatever, in India or Kandy. They went to Ceylon, which is now Sri Lanka.
It was only India and Ceylon, so
you can tell these sort of shots are in places a bit different by the clothes they're wearing.
Yes.
I'm not sure where that one was. So that was like a more official. That's probably the Australian team, is it? Yeah, that is. That's Lindsay Hassett in the middle.
Dad's right on the end, standing up.
Left. Our left.
Our left, looking at it.
Yeah.
On the end is Dad.
Another shot. I reckon that's in India or Kandy or somewhere.
Oh yeah, it would be. Yeah.
And this is in Madras. There you go. Madras. Is Madras in India?
Yes, it is.
We're showing our ignorance here. I am.
No. Well, Madras is a city in India. Yeah.
There they are with their lays. Someone's taking a different angle. I always like that as a photographer, that someone else takes it from a different angle other than just the second shooter takes that shot.
Yeah.
Not sure where that is.
No idea.
One of the banquets that they've at it, by the looks of things.
I would suggest they're good feed.
Probably India or Kandy. Yeah. And there's a local band has come out to celebrate them.
Yeah.
And this must be in Ceylon, I think, or maybe India, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Some of you might recognise some of these places as you look. And children, of course, as they do in India today and these countries, they're all cricket mad and they come out to see people travelling for.
Yeah.
So this must have been taken from the bus.
I would suggest that they would be the poorer people too.
Some interested spectators there. Look at those kids.
Yeah.
Poona Junction. That must be one of those local cricket games in over there.
Yes.
Look at that. Look at the crowds.
Yeah.
Aerial shot. There's the Porthos boat that's got 4 engines.
So got 4 engines.
So is that a Lancaster?
Well, it doesn't look quite like one.
No, it doesn't look like one.
The front end doesn't look quite right. No. I couldn't tell you what that is.
Anyway, these are just general scenes, folks. We don't really know what these are. They're probably written in the album, but I didn't actually get those. And this is in Kandy, of course, in Sri Lanka these days, on the elephants. Back to Lords. Coming out onto the field, obviously fielding. Lovely shot of, look at those old buildings. That must be back in India or somewhere again. All those displays.
Just as got the India up about it.
And there we are. Lest we forget. There's your dad.
That's him,
There's your dad. Can you remember how to do the ode?
Yeah. I can.
Do you want to try and do that now?
Okay.
We haven't rehearsed this, folks. Thank you, Greg. This is what we usually do, of course, on Remembrance Day. Thanks, Greg.
They shall grow not old as we that are left grow old. Age now shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
Okay, so here we are. That's the end of our slideshow, folks, and the end of our presentation. We're just looking up at the camera here to sign off. And we hope you found that interesting. There will be other links, as I said, underneath on the excuse me, under the notes underneath the actual video on my YouTube channel. And you'll find some earlier information that are off of my blogs and the earlier version of this interview that we did back some time ago when we were both a bit younger back then.
We were, Jeff.
So anyway,
we're only in our 70s.
Here we are, yeah. So thanks for watching. I hope you found that interesting. And let's just spend some time to remember the people who are still fighting in wars, and the people who've gone behind, and the people who lost people in wartime, and sometimes people many years later are still got sad memories from some of that. So it's our thoughts and prayers really are with those people, that somewhere along the way they've found some comfort in remembering the people that have gone before us. So thanks, Greg, for doing this.
My pleasure, Jeff.
Yeah.
It's been very enjoyable.
That's good. And we will have a, by the time this goes to air, which is about the same time, you'll be giving your talk to the Glenelg Probus Club.
Which is a couple of months away,
a couple of months ago.
The 11th of the 11th, yes.
But this will have helped us today to be able to prepare for that.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So thanks, everyone.
We've bumbled a bit, but I think we've got through it all right, haven't we?
I think we have. I don't think we've got to do too much editing.
No, we've not.
But you know, we'll see how we go. So thanks for watching, everyone.
Thank you very much.
We'll see you next time.
Yes, goodbye.